Well, Saturday marks the start of Black History Month, and classical music lovers will have a chance to learn more about a seminal composer on that day at McNally Robinson Booksellers through a lecture called The Cleverest Fellow. The lecture centers around the works and life of Samuel Coleridge-Taylor, and the man giving that lecture is Larry Strachan, the leader of the Chamber Orchestra Without Borders. Larry joins me live in the Classic 107 studios to tell us more. Good morning.
Good morning, Nolan.
Thanks so much for being here with us this morning. First of all, the title is so evocative, The Cleverest Fellow. Tell me about where you came up with that, and why is it a descriptor for Samuel Coleridge-Taylor?
Well, The Cleverest Fellow is basically a quote from none other than the seminal composer Sir Edward Elgar.
Wow.
And Elgar was unable to fulfill an orchestral commission, and he recommended this young Samuel Coleridge-Taylor, who was in his early 20s at the time, just probably still a student, just finishing up his studies at the Royal College of Music under Charles Stanford, and he couldn't fill this commission, so he basically said about Coleridge-Taylor, he is far and away the cleverest among all the young men. And he's the one that should be to fill this commission. And he wrote this amazing orchestral work, The Ballade for Orchestra, which was enthusiastically received. So that's where the quote comes from, none other than Elgar.
Why, when you choose a person to talk about in a lecture like this, why Coleridge-Taylor as opposed to maybe someone else to highlight for music fans? 2025
is the 150th anniversary of Coleridge-Taylor's birth. So this is the time to celebrate his achievements.
Yeah.
With Chamber Orchestra Without Borders, we're hoping this year to celebrate that as well. We're sort of, waiting for certain, factors to kick in, except, for example, funding. We're sort of waiting for funding to kick in.
Always the funding.
To see if we can do that. But we plan to do, a 150th anniversary celebration of Coleridge-Taylor performing some of his orchestral work. So this is why, we always like to celebrate, anniversaries in classical music. I'm not sure what other, 100th or 200th or 300th anniversaries are celebrating this year, but definitely I wanted to make a note of the 150th anniversary of his birth this year.
Absolutely. Do you remember the first time that you encountered Coleridge-Taylor's music personally?
I was thinking about this because I thought, no one's probably going to ask me this question. And how did I come? Because, for example, I know exactly when I was interested in Scott Joplin. He was sort of the first Black composer that sort of, I wouldn't say discovered. I mean, he was always out there. It's just that I became aware about, through his piano rags and performing those and recitals, and then learning about his opera Treemonisha and everything that surrounds his wanting to write for the stage. But that sort of goes hand in hand with I've always been interested in locating composers outside the mainstream. And whether it be, female composers like back in the day, Cécile Chaminade, I was performing a lot of her art song at the time, back as a student or after my student days in the 90s. And then, I remember once you remember those catalogs back in the day where you can, back in the CD era, I'm not sure if still, whatever. I've never left that era. I still buy CDs occasionally. And then there's this catalog, and you order CDs, you put it in the mail, you put your order in the mail, and you got these CDs back. I remember once I ordered a whole bunch of these, obscure composers, and one of them was Samuel Coleridge-Taylor. And I had ordered, I don't know if I knew that he was a Black composer, a composer of mixed race. I'm not sure if I knew that at the time when I ordered it. I just, on a whim, because that's why, this person looks interesting. It was a recording of his clarinet quintet, which it was actually the world premiere recording of it.
Wow. And
some piano music and songs and whatnot. So, I was completely taken with the clarinet quintet. And then, along the way, you sort of discover, Hiawatha, his greatest, among all the other achievements he made, was this amazing Hiawatha's Wedding Feast, this amazing oratorio, which just came like a year or two after the Ballade and was all the rage throughout both sides of the Atlantic. He became a superstar with that. That oratorio was performed as many times as Messiah at the time. and was performed regularly throughout Great Britain, throughout other parts of the world, United States, for a number of decades. And I don't know if you know, do you know in that seminal tenor aria, On Away, Beloved?
I have heard On Away.
Yeah,
Yes.
I think every tenor wanted to sing that at the time. That was the breakaway song, or tune. From that.
Right up there with like In Every Valley or something like that
much,
from Messiah.
yes,
Yeah,
exactly. So that's, and then once I became aware of that piece, and I remember one thing I do remember was when the first recording of the violin concerto came out, and that was a special recording, which I'll definitely play in my on Saturday, which came out with the Johannesburg Philharmonic Orchestra. And
making all the notes for pieces we need to be playing in the next little while.
Yeah, with Philippe Graffin, the violin soloist, and that came out in the mid-2000s or thereabouts, or early 2000s. And I as soon as I heard it, I grabbed that because that was, I think, a very important recording, and I'm definitely a fan of that concerto. So it's just kind of a slow burner to me along the way, learning about Samuel Coleridge-Taylor, and then I think this has been great to do this lecture just for me to learn more about his. I mean, it could have really went sideways, his early career. I don't want to get. Hey, I want people to come. I don't want to divulge too much here.
That's right.
But
can't give it all away.
But he could have easily been an orphan. We're talking about a mixed race child in Victorian England, and it could have, he never knew the father. The father had already went back to Sierra Leone. He never knew his father, so he could not have been accepted by the mother's family. If the mother's family didn't take him in and accept him, he could have easily gone to the orphanage system, and who knows what would happen to him.
Wow.
So, yeah.
So many factors that have come from your slow burn sort of exposure to Samuel Coleridge-Taylor, and then that we'll get a fast burn, as it were, for one class on this Saturday. But then you've also got another one that's dedicated to the Hiawatha Suite as well. Like as we've been talking about this incredible masterwork that's up there with Messiah, you've got a full class dedicated to that piece alone. And we've talked a little bit about what makes that piece so remarkable as it stands as a cultural sort of touchstone musically. What stands out to you as somebody who is as a conductor, as a musician yourself? What stands out to you about that piece on a musical level?
Well, the immediacy of the melody. It's just so, he just has a very easy way of manufacturing beautifully constructed melody, and the surprises of the orchestration. Just sumptuous orchestration. It's late Victorian era, but it's just beautifully evocative how he sets the text. The Longfellow text of the Hiawatha, his Hiawatha long poem, and so it's just so evocative. Of course, these Hiawatha poems were very popular at the time. I guess one thing we can go into the fact that yes, these were, Longfellow, a settler writer writing about indigenous things, and indigenous, I guess, folklore, and so we can talk about that aspect of it, how it transfers to today, and just that conversation is interesting alone.
Yeah.
But this was, as I mentioned, a tremendous success for him, and what we'll do is listen to the entire original weddings feast, the Hiawatha's wedding feast. It was so popular. He named his firstborn child Hiawatha.
Wow.
Okay. So, and then it was so popular, he had to come up with the trilogy, right? Which were the next two that followed it, which was the death of Minnehaha and then Hiawatha's departure. So the next two to make the full Hiawatha trilogy that came out in 1900. So. Yeah. 150
years of Samuel Coleridge-Taylor being celebrated this year, as you mentioned. What do you think the resonating power of that music is here in 2025?
It's the power of a person of mixed race, a black composer, just being able to survive the insults occasionally, and the pride you can hear in his voice of his race, and that goes through other, his use of spirituals, his use of West Indian aspects, and him trying to uplift his race, and you can feel that power that's surging through his art.
Yeah, that's all really. It's exciting to even watch you. Never mind, listen to you talk about it, but watch you talk about it as you're moving your arms and describing all of this incredible music. What do you hope audiences take away about Samuel Coleridge-Taylor, and then how that applies to their own slow burns of classical music exposure?
Well, hopefully that will make them interested in going to see Luke Welsh, perform with Virtuosi.
That's right.
Concerts. He's coming here in March to perform music of Nathaniel Dett and Samuel Coleridge-Taylor. So I hope they want to hear his piano music, and maybe the symphony. Our WSO is performing a piece by Samuel Coleridge-Taylor, I think in April. I think it's the Ballade, if I'm not mistaken. So maybe they'll encourage them to go and hear this music live for themselves.
Yeah,
and to do their own exploring online and seeing what's out there on the internet, on YouTube, and discover their own performances and just to, learn about, that this person and just to think about the fact that me as a student, I went through university without knowing this person existed.
Right.
Just think about that. This is a person who Elgar admired. Stanford was his teacher. Stanford conducted. You can never get more validation than conducting the premiere of Hiawatha's Wedding Feast. His teacher did that. Charles Stanford conducted the premiere. So, this is the stature this guy was at a young age. In his early 20s, he wrote Hiawatha. He died at 37, tragically. So, so this is a person we should be learning about him alongside Elgar, right?
Yeah.
As a seminal composer of that time.
Absolutely.
And he wrote in every form imaginable. So, he really made his mark in the musical world.
Larry, thank you so much for coming in to talk about your upcoming lectures and about Samuel Coleridge-Taylor, and telling us more about this incredible composer.
You're welcome. Thanks for the time.